It is that time again, folks. It is time for Drop a Line. Thank you for joining us. One of our most recurring guests is back. It's been a while, but Matt Romeo is joining us tonight. Please welcome Matthew Romeo. And joining me now on CNN News, I'm hearing we're on Drop a Line on One Two Promotions channel. You love One Two Promotion, right? Joining us is Matt Romeo. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I am very, yep, there's definitely an echo. Okay, so I'm going to lower Instagram here. And Instagram, just so you know, if there's too many echo problems tonight, we might disappear from Instagram and go entirely on YouTube. We're going to let Andrew, who works behind the scenes, let us know if that continues to be a problem. But just stick around. If the stream goes dead, look for us on YouTube at One True Promotion. Matt, did you mute your computer on your side?
Yes, my computer is muted, and I'm worried it might be that it's still picking up my audio because I just muted your audio so that you could hear me at least.
So we'll mess around for a couple of minutes, and we'll let Andrew tell us if it continues to be a problem. And if not, we'll invite all of our Instagrammers, if that's cool with you, Matt, over to the YouTube channel, and we'll continue there with a little bit less echo. So, Matt, I am very happy to see you. How are you this evening?
I'm good, my friend. Thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure getting to talk to you. Yeah, it's been too long.
It has been too long. I'm trying to remember the last time you were joining us live, just the two of us. I know we had you on for a couple of specials. I know that Andrew had you on for a couple of shows. When was your first episode on Drop a Line, though?
I feel like that was probably in October, November of last year, so almost a year or so.
It has been a year. Okay, so let us, one of my questions for you was, tell us what it's been like for you this past year. Since we last left off with you, what has changed?
Well, I have published my third book, self-published. Maven Knight, Heir of Providence is out, completing the trilogy, so it is all available on Amazon for those of you who want to binge read. Ebook and paperback. I have been refining two other stories. One is a science fiction heist novel that I wrote for NaNoWriMo 2020. That's in its first draft stage. And then I'm on my fourth draft of the Seaworth Chronicles, which is a fantasy series.
Ooh, so we've got science fiction and we've got fantasy from Matthew Romeo. All right, so one of the things I really love is how science fiction and fantasy can often intermingle. But I'm curious how it is for you. Do you feel like they're two separate genres, or were you inspired kind of similarly to do each of these series?
So I think that it's kind of like, there's light, dark, and then there's the gray in between. There is hard science fiction, there's hard fantasy, but then I'm also a firm believer of science fantasy, which is what I define my Maven Knight trilogy as. It's a combination of both, where you get, the science fiction aesthetic, but you get some mysticism, some magic. But then there is the heist story that I'm making is hard science fiction. There's no real mysticism, no magic, just the hard science as best as I can do because I'm not a scientist. And then with fantasy, it's, I'm setting it in the medieval era, with all the fantasy races, elves, dwarves, Goliaths, the works, and kind of keeping it, as a self-contained series.
I do like self-contained. One of my favorite things about a self-contained series is that it can, the more you focus on the smaller details, a little less on the crossing over and the expanded lore and the spinoffs and this and that, the more you really focus and fine tune those little details, you get these short but sweet mythologies that are just feel so fresh and unique every time you crack them open. I mean, yeah, like, can you name a few inspirations?
Oh, absolutely. Prime example, Lord of the Rings, that was my bread and butter growing up. I first saw those when I was in middle school, instantly fell in love. This is probably sacrilegious, but I have actually not read the Lord of the Rings books. I've only read The Hobbit.
And that is our show. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on Drop a Line. Unfortunately, it is time to go because we simply cannot continue the conversation.
I know.
I'm sorry. Please continue.
Terrible author. But I was most and then I also read the Aragon inheritance cycle when I was in high school, which, that was a big inspiration for a lot of my stories. That's a classic hero's journey. It's got a great cast of characters and a great magic system. But my biggest inspiration for writing Seaworth, outside of D&D, and I'll get into that, but it was The Way of Kings, book 1 of the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson.
And Andrew, our guy behind the scenes, is a very big fan of that. Kira has joined us on Facebook. She is announcing her truth this evening. Matt, apparently behind the scenes, has gotten very angry at her for not watching Lord of the Rings, but you have all heard it tonight. He has not read Lord of the Rings, so can he truly be mad? Anyway, Matt, it seems we are having a significant sound problem. So if it's okay with you, can we move over to YouTube to use 2 microphones? So Instagram, we are having a bit of echo because we're using 2 streaming devices at once. So we're actually going to cut the Instagram stream right here. We are going to continue this interview until 10:15 over on YouTube at One True Promotion. If you would like to see the remainder of the discussion, please join us there. We would love to chat with you. We would love to take your questions. Matt would love to take your questions. And while you're there, please subscribe to us so that you can get the updates about our future shows. We are doing more and more YouTube streams. That is One True Promotion. I put it in the chat right there on YouTube. Thank you very much, Instagram. See you there. And thank you, Matt, for your patience with that. I know that's a little unorthodox. We're going to play a little promo before we get back into it. All right?
All right.
We are back. How's it going? How are we sounding?
How am I sounding? Is there any issues on my end? I knew it was going to be my end.
Yeah, it's okay. It happens. It happens when we just do what we can and we continue the conversation. Matt, can you say a few words to the audience so we can test your mic?
Yes. Hello, audience. I am Matthew Romeo. I am the author of the Maven Knight trilogy. If you're just joining us, which is a science fantasy series available on Amazon for ebook and paperback. I'm also a fantasy co-author of the Seaworth Chronicles, which is an upcoming fantasy series.
Thank you so much, Matt. You sound great. And thank you, everybody who is watching here on YouTube. Please continue to leave us questions. Thank you for joining us, Ariel. Thank you for joining us, Kira. I love StreamYard because it lets everybody join us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch from 3 different places. They can join us all at the same time. Matt, thank you for being such a sport about the sudden change. It really is always great to have you here.
I know, it's always Instagram's fault.
It is always Instagram's fault, right? We are going to go just a few minutes longer tonight so we can get you back some of the time that you lost, all right? And
Sounds good, my friend.
that's something we always do anytime we have to make an adjustment. We always make sure we give you the full 45 because, we love to chat. So,
yeah.
One of my goals as a host is to talk less. So, right? I'm supposed to be.
No, you're a fantastic host.
Before we move on to talking about your very exciting Seaworth Chronicles, for those who might not know, can you give maybe a brief description and synopses, spoiler-free, of the Maven Knight trilogy?
Oh boy! All right, this is always the tough one. Is trying not to go into spoilers. So the Maven Knight trilogy is a science fantasy series set in the world of Pangaea, which is a supercontinent in the far future, where the old world of the domain was disrupted by an event called the Ending. Their marshals, the Maven Knights, who were the guardians of order and justice, they were wiped out. 1,000 years have passed since that event happened. The world has kind of recovered into the quote-unquote new world. There's various nations, various factions. Humanity has kind of recovered a lot of technology, so it is still keeping its sci-fi edge. But the Maven Knights are starting to come out of the woodwork, per se. A lot of their artifacts have been scattered throughout the land. There's a lot of factions vying for that kind of power. And then there are two characters at the center of it all, one of which is Talir, who is a scavenger. He spends his life scrapping old domain technology and hoping for a better future. And the other is Serena, who is a brewer in one of the big capital cities of one of the nations. And she gets targeted by a nefarious organization for some reason.
Very nefarious.
Yeah, very nefarious. So their paths collide, and their journey is about bringing the Maven Knights back.
It's awesome. I've been reading the book, as we discussed before the show. One of the things that stands out the most is the dialogue between the characters. I could tell very early on, actually, that this is a story about people coming together. Do you want to comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. I wrote this at a time when I was living with 3 roommates from college. We had a merry band of pals among us, different backgrounds, different beliefs, but we all just, we came together as friends. The friendship is it's one of those things that is a big part of my books, even in Seaworth as well. But in Maven Knight in particular, this was spawned again by another RPG that we were playing, where all of our characters, there were about 6 or 8 of us, playing as these various despondent or this ragtag team of characters, and basing it off of my friends' personalities, all these characters really just it made their voices so much clearer. And I love bringing people together. That's my thing as an author.
I think that's really a great brand that you're building there, because what does this world need at the end of the day?
We need bonds of friendship. That's what we need.
Absolutely. And I think that, every author has a brand. Every book has a goal that it's trying to accomplish. And I think that what Maven Knight sets out to do is something that can not only be enjoyable to folks now, but it is something that can resonate far into the future, God willing.
That is my goal. Is I wanted to tell a tale that was relatively timeless, about, friendship being a salvation, especially if you come from a rough background or if you come from a broken family, that there's always hope that you can find your family.
That's awesome. I love it. Do you have a favorite character, scene, passage, piece of equipment? Do you have any favorite things from the Maven Knight trilogy?
I've got some favorites, and I'll try and avoid spoilers. My favorite character, aside from Talir and Serena, they're my babies. My favorite character is Vivian, just because she is so outspoken. She's so quippy. She's like she's confident, but not in an over obnoxious way. Like she's living her best life.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so much fun to write. I'd say my favorite set piece in the first book, and I'll keep it to like the first act so that I'm not going into full spoilers, is the convoy scene. The convoy scene where all the characters meet. You don't really know what's going on. Everybody's on edge. Everybody's very distrustful. And then just, bleep hits the fan, and they have to.
You can say shit on Drop a Line.
All right, I didn't want to be presumptuous,
but
yeah, shit hits the fan, and they end up in a fight for survival.
Absolutely, and I can tell people who are considering buying it that it really does pick up quickly. It is currently my bedside read. I keep it very close to my area when I decide to, stretch out and carry on with the routine of getting up early and trying to be consistent with when my head hits the pillow. And it has actually been a very good companion for rounding out the night. And it really does pick up very quickly and is so, so very fun. I mean, I grew up with Star Wars. I grew up with Lord of the Rings. And I'm not saying that it's in any way derivative, but it really does bring together that kind of fantasy adventure with science fiction elements that is just so cool and such a journey away from what I'm used to.
And to go back on one of your other questions about if I had a favorite piece of tech,
yes,
this was it's one of the swords that gets introduced. It's not a spoiler because you know me. I'm all about swords. Swords are of course going to be introduced in this genre and in this series. It is called an archblade, and it's kind of like it's a weapon that starts off as a scepter. So it looks like it's just a staff, but then it kind of ripples and shifts into like a bit of like a hooked curved blade, like a katana.
I'm not going to say where, but I have encountered this blade. I mean to tell you, right before the interview, I got to that part. I was like, all right.
Yep.
So thank you for telling us a little bit about the Maven Knight. I really hope that you get some sales off of this interview. I think that people will have a good time with it, and it'll really enrich their lives. But the Maven Knight trilogy is published.
It is.
You have an upcoming publication that I think the people would want to know about as well. What are you currently working on?
So I'm currently working on, and this is my most ambitious project so far. It is a co-written series, about 10 books. It is known as the Seaworth Chronicles. I am developing this with my good friend and co-author, M.A. Wyman. We started out this series probably in early 2019. That's when I started writing the first few chapters. This was spawned from a D&D session. We had made our characters Argus Swift. I was Argus Swiftfingers, a rogue swashbuckler, and he was Uthal, the Goliath barbarian in that campaign. And just the camaraderie and just the amount of fun we had with those characters really just made me want to continue their tales in a different medium. Of course, I don't want to get any copyright stuff from, Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm having to change a lot of stuff. But this story is very much based on a lot of the adventures we had in those campaigns. And it's been different writing the uncertain, rising hero versus someone he's basically a Han Solo character. He's full of himself, he likes to quip, but he has a heart of gold, and having that kind of difference of POVs to write from has been really fun.
That is really fun. And I think that, there's an element of acting to good writing,
Yes, absolutely. And another inspiration for Seaworth was The Princess Bride. It's it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I see memes of this a lot. It's just like, why do guys like The Princess Bride so much? And it's just like, because it's great.
I hope to one day have even half that quick a wit.
Yes, absolutely.
Incomparable.
Yeah, absolutely. And Argus with Fingers is also based heavily on Inigo Montoya as the swashbuckler with the epic quest, and Uthal is very much based on the gentle Goliath Fezzik.
Nice, very, very nice. We're getting some great comments tonight. I just want to address a couple of those. That's Kira cool. And Ariel are here, being very supportive of your message and your banana shirt.
Banana shirt.
Ariel agrees. It definitely has a video game vibe to it. The Maven Knight. I'm laughing not because of that, but because of the Princess Bride quotes that are happening in the comments now. Please keep them coming.
Inconceivable.
Yeah. Gary and I actually watched the homemade version by all the different celebrity cuts.
Oh goodness,
we loved it. We loved it. We had a great time with that.
I think any reenactment by those actors would still just yield great results.
Absolutely, and it's great that they all were able to do it with such synergy, even from miles and miles away. But I really think ask questions if you want, everybody. You know the drill. Absolutely. If you want to leave some questions, Matt and I would be happy to answer them. So one thing I wanted to ask about Seaworth was that for the Dungeons and Dragons player out there, right? I sadly haven't played yet. I know it's a shame. I know it's a horrible thing for a nerd such as myself to say, right? But yeah, I haven't had the pleasure. But I know that it's a very interactive group experience, and I'm curious what the D&D fan can get fresh from the Seaward Chronicles.
So, that's a tough one because it very much a lot of my beta readers have given feedback saying that it reads just like a D&D campaign. They got a lot of those vibes from it. The thing that I guess differentiates it from the game is that the characters don't start off in the ensemble. Like the ensemble builds over the course of the story, whereas in D&D, if you've got 4 friends you're playing with, you all start right there, like you're on a convoy or you're defending a town. You meet at a tavern immediately.
Right.
So this one, it's more of a slow build. You get an Argus chapter, an Uthal chapter, and then they start kind of meeting. And then there are 2 other characters in the story that are pretty big names and at least behind the scenes for us that get introduced. And the party builds slowly over the course of the story.
See, I think that's cool because you can insert yourself into the story, but not at the same point you're used to. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Like it's a much different experience, or it's a much different story of how it starts off versus how we met in the campaign. The campaign, it was a gauntlet. We were trying to get into a guild in one of the big cities. This story doesn't have any of that. It's more of a natural, like how would a Goliath from the mountains meet a guy from the city?
But that's so cool. Like what I love about just the concept is that I'm already hearing the why,
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think Kira has a question.
She does. Kira, you have asked, do you ever experience regret after having published a story, wishing you could go back and add something? If so, what was it?
Oh boy, yes. I am a huge nitpicker of my own work. There are still so many things in all 3 Maven Knight books that I wish I had tweaked, cut out, or edited. So I'll keep it to the first book, and I wish my regret for the first book is that I still feel like the first act is slow, and I kind of wish I had put more, some more like a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more of a faster pace, because it starts out with like these big booming 6-7 chapters, and then I'm trying not to spoil it for you, Alec, but I feel like the next like couple of chapters kind of slow down. It's for character moments, of course, but for me, I'm just like, all right, I feel like this could have been, honed down to like one chapter or something.
And I would agree with Matt that looking at my own work, I sometimes get these thoughts like, oh, I could have started this way, or oh, in this scene, this, instead of this line of dialogue or this frank observation, I could have used this image to drive the point home, something along those lines. And sometimes I've gone back and found plot holes. I've gone back and found plot holes that readers to this day are just jumping right over. Like, and because it's little stuff. Like I look back and I realize that I got like the dates totally wrong in two scenes talking about the same event. I totally flubbed the timeline. I'm just like,
hope nobody notices.
And nobody has noticed yet, but now they're going to be like, what's he talking about? But no, I think that, Kira, I think that is something that all writers feel. And I wouldn't say that I regret it. I used to regret it. But I think that our writing reflects who we were at that time. And it's not something that needs to be erased or not seen. It's something that really just kind of tracks your growth as that stack of books grows over the years. Matt, what do you think of that?
Oh, I 100% agree with that. It's when I first published Maven Knight back in 2018, I was doing a lot of tweaking, not to like the story or to stuff. It was more just, fixing these little continuity issues that I noticed right after publishing. So I'm like, oh, I need to fix that. But probably since December of 2018, I have not tweaked with the actual manuscript that is uploaded. I've reformatted it a little bit just to make it, less pages and whatnot, make it a little bit more digestible. But you're absolutely right. It's, you don't want to edit it so that it's unrecognizable, because I'm a very different writer from where I was when I wrote Maven Knight.
Mm-hmm. And I really want to thank you very much, Kira, for your lovely compliment. We love your question. Thanks for asking a great question. Keep
Absolutely,
them coming,
Kira. Keep them coming.
But I really think that you're being modest, because honestly, and I'm I want you to understand that I'm being 100% honest with you when I say it is not as slow as Lord of the Rings.
All right, so that's a good compliment. I'll take that.
Beaten Tolkien in terms of hooking me in and grabbing my interest. So you can take that to sleep with you this evening.
I'll take that compliment. And there is one thing that I am a little vain about with my series, as much as I critique it. And this has only sprouted up over this past year now that I've been getting a lot more feedback from indie authors of my same mindset. But I wrote this trilogy almost as a response to the Star Wars sequel trilogy. And in my mind, I was like, this is how I think it would be better. And some of my readers have agreed. It's like, this is kind of what it should have been. And that's the only horn I'm going to toot of myself.
Hey, well, I mean, it's, I'm not going to say it's not hard, because you put a lot of work into that. But seriously, but when something is such a, money grab, really, overall, that basically is just kind of shooting for, audience approvals and ratings and this and that. I mean, a passionate artist like yourself, in my opinion, is always going to win that fight. Always. And like I said, I really do think that your story has the power to resonate, and I think that it will.
I hope it does.
We have another great question coming in from Ariel. What made you decide to co-write instead of writing your new story alone?
So I get asked this a lot, and it always comes back to my buddy M.A. Wyman. It's because I initially did start writing it on my own. Like I was, kind of drafting this story idea, and I wrote the first probably 5 chapters. And then I let it slip to him that I was, chronicling the stories of Argus and Uthal. And he was just like, without me? like you can't write Uthal without me. And I was like, okay, I never fought him on it. I was never going to be like, no, this is my story. I want to do it. It's Uthal is your character. He is your voice. So of course, I'd be foolish not to have him come in and, answer the questions that I'm always having about his character, having him write his dialogue, having him write his backstory. So it's, it came about of me. It was just a slip of the tongue, and now I'm a co-author.
I love that though, because it's true. Like, so none of us really work alone. You know what I mean? Every writer's process is different, and most writers have, they accept, they take the full author credit, and they have their editors and their planners and their developmental editors, and they're this and they're that, and that's completely legitimate. But when somebody has created an entire character, an entire vision that is part of your story, it really is a co-authored project,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say I didn't have exterior sources for Maven Knight as well. Like I had, a friend who lives in Pennsylvania. She was, a very big part of Serena's development in the early phases. She was always giving feedback. I made sure to have female beta readers to make sure that the female voice came through and was accurate. So they also had a big say in that, because, it's bold for a guy to try and write a woman's perspective.
Well, I tried to write a 16-year-old girl's perspective, and we can tackle that in another interview. But
once I have read Barker's rules, we can absolutely tackle it.
Oh my Lord, I'm just trying not to take away too much of your time, but yeah, I know what you mean, and I definitely found myself up creek. Kira says that makes a lot of sense. She also says, I've thought about how major stories could be rewritten besides Star Wars. Are there any other stories you thought should have been written differently?
Oh boy. Well, I'm sure it is being written differently by George R.R. Martin, but the final 2 seasons of Game of Thrones are atrocious and deserved so much better writing than what was given.
Let's get into that, because this episode actually came about while we were trading letters about that. We were like, we were starting to get into it, and I was like, you want to do another drop line? But dude, like, something, we respect everybody's perspective on this show. If you liked the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, I would love for you to come on and talk to me about it. It's totally legitimate. But I mean, between you and me, Matt, like,
no one will ever convince me that those final 2 seasons are good, which is a bummer, because I actually really liked season 7 when it came out, because I thought it was building to this big epic thing. But then when it falls flat on its face, you're like, okay, so both of these seasons are bad now.
Yeah, you realize what they were laying the groundwork as early as season 7, and it was just like, oh man, I wish we could go back and cancel this whole arc now, because
the whole thing.
Oh my goodness. And it's just like, didn't they kind of really like ramp up production so that they could like finish it and go do a Star Wars series that like now isn't even happening?
Which is the most hilariously just frustrating thing ever, because these guys, Dan and Dave from D&D, or from Game of Thrones, but they wanted to rush season 7 and season 8 just so that they could do their own Star Wars trilogy, which got canceled from the reception of season 8.
I tell you, it really was a shame, because it is amazing to me how captivated the world was for such an extended period of time by. I was a huge fan of Game of Thrones, so I don't want this to come across as I'm throwing stones, but I honestly think that it was regarded as like a crossover hit, where they were telling real stories and real characters in a fantasy setting. I would argue Lord of the Rings does that well enough. I would argue that Game of Thrones wasn't the first, but it was the first to captivate the entire world to that degree. It's like, how do you not make sure the final episode is breaking records?
Right. Like, and I remember the discussion we were having. It's like, Game of Thrones went from being this worldwide cultural phenomenon that everybody was talking about to just being dead overnight. Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about it anymore.
It's like a bomb went off. Nobody talks about Game of Thrones anymore. It never happened.
Yeah, and the thing that is even more like just tragic about it is I don't even want to go back and watch the earlier seasons because I know where it goes. I'm like, well, none of this means anything. None of this matters. Like, I absolutely love the first 4 seasons.
Me too.
Like, they're so good. Season 5 has some good moments. It's a little iffy. Season 6 has some really good episodes in it.
Yeah.
But just, it's really disheartening. Like, just to, like, this big passion project that George R.R. Martin had is now just, it bears the stink now.
It really does. No, I agree with you completely. And it's just like, you could see like in much of the writing in his novels, which was drawn from for the earlier seasons, you can see that we were very much experiencing one very unique person's vision with some added tweaks from a few very passionate fans. And that formula was very, very successful. What I mean by that, a good example of that, and we will move on from this soon. We have questions coming in. We will address all of your questions, I promise. But what I mean by that is that there were things like the Red Wedding and the War of the Five Kings that were done almost to the T from Martin's books. But then they had tweaked things like Arya meeting Tywin Lannister for a season. You know what I mean? Which was like something these two fans always wanted to see that never happened in the books. They had this really great relationship and synergy that just made it wonderful. And then in the last 2 seasons, it felt like beneath the surface, it was all used up TV tropes.
Yeah.
And that to me was the biggest disappointment.
Well, and this is what I was frustrated with is I wouldn't have minded if it was traditional TV tropes in a good way. Like if they were like, no, Jon is the chosen one. He defeats the Night King. Yeah. He is Azor Ahai, all this good stuff. Like that would have been amazing. But they saw these tropes that they were leading to, and they were like, no, let's just not do that, even though the story is building to that.
Yeah, they failed to stick a single landing. And that's like not even exaggeration. So, yeah, man, I hear you. But we could definitely get into that for hours and hours. But I don't want to like all the great questions we're getting. Let me see, yada, yada, yada. If he ever releases the new books, my husband complains about that all the time. Ariel says, yeah, I know. He's he actually mentioned in an interview, finally, for the first time ever, that he's now unsure if he ever will. So,
wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, at least he's being straight up now. Like, I'd rather have a definitive answer than being strung along.
Kira laments that the writers would rush a story as major as that. And Andrew points out that Game of Thrones became popular mostly for the fact that nobody was safe. Another thing that changed in season 8, where characters were miraculously surviving things to the point that it was ridiculous.
Armor now.
Yeah. And then Andrew adds he would rewrite Alien 3 and 4. Yes.
I agree with that too, because there is a lot of stuff like Alien 3. I've never been a fan of that movie, but Alien 4, there are certain things in there that I do enjoy, and it's mainly just the pirate cast.
Yeah.
The smugglers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Andrew and I marathoned that one weekend, and it was a tough marathon. It was a tough marathon. The reason it was tough was because I very much enjoyed the first movie. I enjoyed the second movie even more. And then 3 and 4, I was kind of like,
It peaks at 2, and you're like, oh, what are these movies now?
yeah, I was kind of like, okay, well, we're kind of coming off of that train now. Kira brought up one of my old favorites. That's how a lot of people feel about the show Lost. That's
I've
one I
heard
so wish could be written with a coherent story. Yes, Damon and Carlton, coherence. We very much enjoy that. Although I won't give them too much crap when we need to. It's important to me that people remember when it comes to Lost that this was a mini series without an ending, conceived by J.J. Abrams, who ran away when it got popular. So
I have a comment about that. Is I don't think J.J. Abrams knows how to end anything.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I mean it. Like he put that polar bear on that tropical island because he did not intend to make a full successful series out of that. And when that started happening, he was like, nah, I'm out of here. Have fun with this. Have fun with the tropical polar bears.
He's a guy he's a good concept guy. He's a good, guy to get, the first act in. Like he's a good first actor, but anything second act and third act is just like, nah, we need to give competent storytellers that job.
Absolutely. I didn't let you watch them because I hate 4 and barely stand 3. What do you? Oh, that's right. I didn't even watch Alien 4 and 3. What did I watch? Resurrection and Isolation.
Oh, you watched the new ones. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't like those either.
Prometheus and Alien Covenant are not great.
Covenant, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. I didn't even see 3 and 4. What am I talking about? Okay.
Well, and you're missing the most important ones, Alec and Andrew. You got to watch Alien versus Predator.
It's true. We got to get that done. All right. We've been neglecting a wonderful question from Ariel forever. I've been neglecting. What am I talking about? How do you handle reviews? How do you keep them from influencing how your story continues? Like how some shows cater towards fans. I love these questions.
That's a great question. And it's actually really funny because I wrote the story because I didn't have reviews for it. The only reviews I had were from either my beta readers or from like some really close friends who, they enjoyed it. The beta readers, they kind of knew where everything was going, and they gave me my critiques prior to that. So I didn't really have to deal with fan feedback or fan, I guess, theories that I wanted to appease or ignore, at least for the Maven Knight. I'm hoping it's a different story for Seaworth because, again, we've got 10 books coming up for that. I've got beta reader feedback for the first one, and I'm hoping people come up with some theories for this.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too, man. I mean, listen, I'm really glad that I finally got to sit down and have some reading time of my own. And because you were the next person on the show, I committed myself to cracking open Maven Knight, and I'm glad that I did. I can only imagine after 3 books of that, with an awesome co-author at your disposal, to just have double the creative energy and creative. You want to comment on that?
No, it's totally like, it's almost synergetic creative energy because we almost call each other every day, or I'm texting him about an idea. Like today, I'm in the 4th draft of Battle Bond, which is the first book, and I was just geeking out over it. I was like, dude, I was coming up with like horse breeds. Just geeking out over like the littlest things that we come up with, like, the currency, the various caste, the caste system of the elves, like how the magic system is going to work. Like, we have so much fun world building this that, it really just, it keeps my creative juices on overdrive.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see what you got with as much experience as you've developed. I mean, because I tell you, to me, Maven Knight really is a strong start. It's a modest start, but it's still a strong start. So
I appreciate it.
I think that you are a rapidly growing name. in my opinion.
I appreciate you saying that, my friend. And if you're enjoying the first book, my favorite personally of the Maven Knight series is the second one. The second one is that one I was able to write it the fastest. It's the one that I can reread the most because there are just certain plot beats in there that I love, and I love seeing people's reaction to them.
Well, that's exciting. I'm going to have to go ahead and buy that. So, Matt, we have been talking for about 45 minutes now. We had 1 or 2 interruptions along the way. I think I definitely talked too much. So, we're going to take this question, and we will take more questions, but we're going to take this next question, and then I'm going to make you a very special offer that nobody on the show has ever been given. Think you'd ever turn your series into a board game one day?
Oh, I would love for Maven Knight to be a tabletop RPG game. I've honestly been thinking. A few months ago, someone asked me a similar question when the third book came out, and I was toying with the idea of adapting it as a D&D kind of game with different classes. The magic system is a very set thing. You've got your archetypes. And just the world the world of Pangea is it's pretty vast, so you could have a lot of campaign stories in there.
Absolutely, I think that'd be sick, and I think it would just be such great merchandising too if you can ever get to that point. Just suddenly you start turning it into a franchise.
Absolutely, I'd love to have Maven Knight D&D dice.
Awesome, man. It's just so cool. So yeah, I definitely want to read all 13 of your books for sure.
Well, there's only one of the Seaworth out so far. The other ones, that's going to be a while.
I can wait. But while we're waiting, would you like to do something nobody on the show has ever done before and share with us a quick sample of your work?
Oh, of course, my friend. Of course. And you all get the special preview. It's in its Word doc form.
All right, take it away. It's all.
All righty. He hadn't realized his fingers had trailed down to brush the hilt of his rapier. A sword in hand always made him comfortable, and he felt naked when it was sheathed. Of the 2 swords he possessed, the rapier had far more history than the short sword sheathed on his right hip. Peacemaker, it was called. The rapier had been his first blade. He'd fought and killed dozens with its pristine blade. Undoubtedly, he'd need to kill many more to solidify his name in the eons to come. The mist had cleared by the time Argus reached the base of the mountains. Flower weeds had sprouted from the trees and began to release faint clouds of yellow pollen. Tree leaves adopted their full day colors of gold, while the flower weeds were either violet or green. Though it wasn't toxic, the pollen seriously irritated Argus's eyes. Wiping his eyes, he squinted through the pollen-filled air and saw something that caught his notice. Yards away, a gaping hole had been broken through the canopy of leaves. A big hole. Dozens of branches were flayed, while others were snapped and hanging limply off the tree trunks. That can only mean trouble, Argus told himself. Best not to dwell on it. Yet, something seemed to draw him towards it. Whatever had crashed through the trees itched at his curiosity. Perhaps something valuable fell from above, and it wasn't too far out of the way. With a faint shrug, Argus elected to investigate. Guiding his horse cautiously, he approached the oddity and found a gleaming sword sticking out from the dirt. Embedded point first, the bluish-gray blade was massive, almost 8 feet in length. An Ossus blade. Goliath swords were so large that they required their own classification in forging terms. The hilt and pommel were of a simple make, seemingly hewn from bone. Only a faint decoration of polished stone adorned the hilt in a V shape. Argus scratched his head in confusion. There was no way a sword could cause such destruction. Then he saw it. A large figure lay on its side, facing away from him as leaves.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your microphone is it seems like your microphone has a little bit of a distortion. So if you just want to fix that real quick and maybe go back a couple of paragraphs, just want to make sure we can hear your story well. So sorry to cut in.
Sorry. Can you hear me now? Is it clear?
You're good now. You're good now. Maybe the paper was touching the mic or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Sorry about that.
All right. No problem. Hey, we still got some time. If you want to take it away, crack at it again, go right ahead.
Awesome. I'll go back a couple paragraphs. Yards away, a gaping hole had been broken through the canopy of leaves. A big hole. Dozens of branches were flayed while others were snapped and hanging limply off the tree trunks. That can only mean trouble, Argus told himself. Best not to dwell on it. Yet something seemed to draw him towards it. Whatever had crashed through the trees itched at his curiosity. Perhaps something valuable fell from above, and it wasn't too far out of the way. With a faint shrug, Argus elected to investigate. Guiding his horse cautiously, he approached the oddity and found a gleaming sword sticking out from the dirt. Embedded point first, the bluish-gray blade was massive, almost a blade. Goliath swords were so large that they required their own classification in forging terms. The hilt and pommel were of a simple make, seemingly hewn from bone. Only a faint decoration of polished stone adorned the hilt in a V shape. Argus scratched his head in confusion. There was no way a sword could cause such destruction. Then he saw it. A large figure laid on its side facing away from him, as leaves and twigs covered parts of its body. Even at a distance, Argus could tell the figure was well over 7 feet in height. Broad muscles, grayish skin, and a flowing mane of brown hair confirmed Argus's suspicions. It was a Goliath, a male by the size of it. Pulling his reins, Gallivant stopped imperceptibly, and Argus elected to proceed on foot. He'd be quicker to react than his horse if something ran afoul. Drawing his rapier, Argus approached quietly and carefully so as to not startle the giant man, if he was even alive. A meter from the Goliath, Argus heard a deep, ragged breath escape him. Nearly jumping back into a defensive stance, Argus was both startled and astounded that he was alive. By Argus's guess, the Goliath likely tumbled down the mountain before crashing into the forest. Did he trip, or was he pushed? He shook his head. That's none of my business. Moving around the large man, Argus came to a few unsettling realizations. At first, he saw that the Goliath was younger than the ones he'd seen before, probably in his 19th year. His face was chiseled like hewn marble, and a strong jawline made his face almost seem square. The Goliath was clean-shaven, with bushy eyebrows, a nose that was likely broken, and a large mouth that could easily fit an entire turkey leg. The wounds were what drew his attention next. Bulging muscles along his arms and chest were bruised and cut by the fall. The deeper gashes were likely infected already. Although it seemed like the Goliath had no broken bones, the gash across his chest was just as bad. Dark, bluish-gray blood leaked from the cut that went from his right shoulder all the way to his left hip. Another deep puncture went through his right pectoral. Those aren't natural, Argus mused. He knew sword wounds when he saw them. Based on the fresh blood, Argus surmised that the Goliath had recently acquired them. Lastly, Argus noted that the Goliath had no valuables whatsoever. He only wore a loincloth with no belts or pouches adorning its waistline. Though he wasn't surprised, Argus couldn't help but feel a smudge of disappointment. Nothing was there to make it worth his time, according to his street side. But his more honorable side told him that he should stay and check on him. Another wheeze came from the Goliath as Argus squatted next to him. "Hello there," Argus said as he patted the giant on the shoulder. No response came from the Goliath. Argus frowned and shook the man's shoulder more firmly. "Sir Goliath," Argus said with more volume, "wake up! You need to see an apothecary." Again, the Goliath only let out a ragged breath. Argus stood up and stared at the unconscious creature before him. He was confident that he had done his best to be a courteous traveler. If the Goliath was unable to respond, then there was nothing more he could do. Plus, how would he even be able to help? Gallivant's back would give out in a mere mile trying to carry the big guy. Yes, nothing more to do, Argus tried to convince himself. Nothing more I can do. Yet, he remained there as if stones were tied to his shoes. He couldn't just leave someone to die alone and forgotten in the woods. A hero would do all he could to keep the stranger alive, and Argus wanted to be a legendary hero. Cursing under his breath at how foolish this was, he sheathed his rapier. "Today's your lucky day, big guy," Argus muttered. Although he lacked the strength to drag the Goliath anywhere, Gallivant certainly could. As fast as he could, Argus started collecting the biggest of the scattered branches. Luck was on his side, for he found just enough to accomplish his work. With a bit of elven rope from his equipment pack, Argus was able to fashion a makeshift stretcher and fasten it to the Gallivant's saddle. With the stretcher next to the Goliath, Argus strained every muscle in his body trying to roll him onto it. "It's a shame all that blood didn't make you lighter," Argus grunted as he struggled. His back was sore by the time he managed to get the Goliath onto the stretcher. Fastening the big man to it, Argus made sure he was secure before retrieving the Ossus blade. Nearly 20 pounds and unfathomably large, Argus dragged the sword a few meters before tying it to the stretcher. By the end of it all, Argus had broken into a sweat and his back muscles ached. "You'd better appreciate this, friend," he groaned. "You'd do well to remember the day Argus Swiftfinger saved your gray hide." With a note of finality, Argus hopped onto his horse and continued his ride towards Arthencho. He kept the pace at a brisk trot so as to not cause further harm to his new passenger. Though Gallivant was slow due to the extra baggage, Argus was confident that they'd reach the town in ample time. He just needed to get through the next day. "Hopefully, the big guy doesn't bleed out," Argus said to himself. And that is the end.
Loving it. Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff indeed.
That came in a little bit more clear that time.
It did.
Okay.
Why do I hear my voice?
Hello.
It did. It really did. About halfway through it, I don't know why there was sound distortion. Even after you made that adjustment, the mic was still distorted. But actually, Andrew fixed it. I don't know what he did, but he's a wizard. Loved that story. Amazing work. Wonderful work. Yeah, I cannot wait to read the finished project. I love the characters. I love the distinct voices. I could definitely tell that there are two competing minds here.
Most definitely. And, Argus's POV chapters are definitely, my voice, and then the Uthal POV chapters are Mr. Wyman's voice.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Listen, I think that everything is better when it's a team effort. So I think that the series is going to rock. I cannot wait to get my copy. And I think you're doing some amazing stuff. We're happy to promote you anytime you need.
Again, I'm always, I'm tickled that you guys have me on here, and I appreciate everything you guys do. Drop a Line is awesome.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Do you have any closing remarks or questions for the audience before you go, sir?
I guess the only closing remarks I have is, if you're interested in a science fiction with a bit of dabble in fantasy, be sure to check out the Maven Knight series. It is on ebook and paperback. The ebook is about $2.99, so it's not a wallet breaker. Reviews are worth more than what we actually make for the profits. So if you do end up picking up Maven Knight, reading it and enjoying it, or not liking it, be sure to leave a review. Any criticism, any praise is always welcome.
That's right, everybody. Please do leave Matt a review. If you buy his book, please leave us all reviews. We are absolutely overjoyed that you joined us this evening. Thank you, Ariel and Kira, for your amazing questions. Always two is better, right? Even in the comment section, it takes two.
Absolutely. It's always a treat getting to chat with you, Kira, Andrew. You guys are awesome. I'm so happy that I've met you guys this past year.
Absolutely. We bring people together here on Drop a Line. If you enjoyed the show, if you'd like to be back on the show, Kira, I think you are coming back on the show. Reach out to me anytime. We'll give you a spot on the calendar. The show is on every Thursday at 9:30 now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at One True Promotion, and a few other channels as well. So please do continue to watch the show. We have a great fall lineup, and we're always going to be talking about the books. So, Matt, thank you for joining us tonight, man. And I really do wish you well with your current project. I wish Mr. Wyman well, and hope that you keep kicking ass.
Thank you, my friend. Best of luck to you as well. I know you've got a big project coming up, and Barker's Rules, your book, is next on my TBR, my friend.
Thank you so much, friend. Thank you very much for being here. That is our show. Thank you for watching Drop a Line. Matt, we'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.
you.